Greetings adventurers, this is Kazu here, and today we're going to be covering one of the most powerful feats in all of Baldur's Gate and Dungeons & Dragons in general for martial characters. That's going to be the Great Weapon Master feat, which you can take as early as level 4. We'll also cover another power attack feat, Sharpshooter, which isn't yet available in early access but will be available on launch for the game, and I'll basically be explaining what these features are, how they work, and how you can take advantage of their all-in passive features to deal massive amounts of damage in the battlefield and live out the fantasy as either an epic warrior or archer. Before we begin, I just want to throw out a quick disclaimer that this video was made during the early access for BG3, which means the Great Weapon Master feat is available and we have been able to play around with it, but the Sharpshooter feat is not out yet and we'll probably have some tweaking to account for the range and cover in Baldur's Gate, but it still has the same all-in passive, so either way, for the purposes of this video, it's not really going to make a difference, but any discrepancies that I do find from the full release of the game will be noted in a pinned comment below. So first things first, we're going to cover the basics. Let's start by explaining what feats are. Upon reaching levels 4, 8, and 12 in a single class, your character will unlock the option to either increase 1 or 2 of their ability scores by a total of 2 points, which means you can put 1 point into 2 different ability scores or 2 points into 1 ability score and increase that. Or you can take a feat. Some feats, such as Athlete, are going to allow you to increase one ability score by a point, but most features force you to make a trade-off between the ability score improvement and unlocking unique passive or active effects and abilities which will enhance your character in various different ways, very differently than how ability score improvements would enhance your character. If you're a fighter, you unlock another additional ability score improvement at level 6, and if you're a rogue, you unlock another additional ability score improvement or feat at level 10. So keep that in mind as well. So for the purposes of this video, we're only going to talk about 2 feats, namely the Great Weapon Master, which is already in the early access, so we can really spend a lot of time on this one to explain how it works and how it functions, but also the Sharpshooter feat, which has been confirmed to be accessible in the full release of Baldur's Gate 3. Now going over the Great Weapon Master feat, you can see here the text reads, when a melee attack scores a critical hit or kills a creature, you can make another melee attack as a bonus action. For this part of the passive, basically if you roll a nat 20 and you get a critical hit, or you land the killing blow on a creature, you're going to be able to use your bonus action to make a melee attack with that same weapon. This applies to all melee weapons, not specifically heavy weapons, and is in general a pretty good feature to have, although situational. The second part of the feat says when attacking with heavy weapons that you are proficient with, you can take a -5 penalty to the attack roll, but the damage is increased by a flat 10. This basically means that we're going to decrease our chance to hit by on average 25%, but we're going to be increasing our damage by a flat value of 10, which depending on how much damage our base weapon is doing could be an increase of damage that's quite substantial, and usually will be quite substantial. This part is referred to in-game as the all-in passive. You can go to your passives tab and click on it to enable it or disable it, allowing you to take that -5 penalty for an additional 10 damage. Additionally, Sharpshooter is going to be a feat very similar to Great Weapon Master, but this is going to apply to ranged weapons rather than heavy weapons. And although it's not yet available in-game, we can refer to the D&D 5th edition rules to see its current effect. Attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged weapon attack rolls. Your ranged weapon attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover, and before you make an attack with a ranged weapon that you're proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll, and if it hits, you deal an additional 10 damage. So it's pretty much functionally the same in terms of the all-in feature. I do think they're going to tweak the cover rules because there's no cover rules in Baldur's Gate 3, so they'll probably change that to something different. Maybe they'll make it so that you can ignore low ground penalties or increase the effective range of your weapon. But the main thing is that you can do this all-in attack, which means that for purposes of damage calculation, we can kind of put this in the same categories, which means that in terms of damage calculations, we can put this pretty much in the same boat as a Great Weapon Master for the purposes of crunching DPR and showing you what the breakpoints are for the weapons. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Baldur's Gate 3 or Dungeons & Dragons in general, we're going to go over the very basics on how to actually calculate attacks. When you land an attack or when you make an attack against an enemy, you're going to add your attack bonus to a 20-sided dice roll, and that number has to be higher than the enemy's armor class values. If you want to see your bonus to attack, you can press K. You can look at your character sheet for your character. Your bonus to attack is going to be your ability modifier, which is either strength by default or dexterity if it's a finesse melee weapon. And if it's a ranged weapon, it's going to also be dexterity. If it's a spell attack, it'll be whatever your spell ability modifier is. And also we're going to add our proficiency bonus if we're proficient with that weapon. The enemy's AC value is something you can see by clicking on an enemy and examining them. That's going to be their armor class. It will determine how hard it is to hit the enemy. So for example, if we are fighting an enemy that has an AC of 15 and we have a +5 bonus to attack from having 16 strength and then being level 1 wielding a long sword, we would need to hit them by rolling a 20-sided dice and then getting a 10 or higher. Now that would mean we have a 55% chance to hit. For calculating damage, we're going to calculate the average damage of our dice and add it to the ability modifier of the weapon, then multiply it by our chance to hit. This is automatically done if you use the resource listed in the description below, known as Ghostwheel's Calculator. He has provided a damage per round calculator, which is going to crunch the numbers very simply to identify how much damage we're going to do on average per round based off the number of attacks we have and based on our crit chance, based on if we even want to use the all-in attack. So for the purposes of taking the -5 to the attack for +10 damage from the all-in feature of the Great Weapon Master and the Sharpshooter features, those are actual rows in this damage per round calculator that we can use to compare the damage values, and that's how we're actually going to identify the breakpoints where your DPR becomes lower for doing an all-in attack. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use Ghostwheel's DPR calculator to check what the breakpoint is for your specific character given these design parameters, right? Your attack bonus, target AC, average damage dice, damage flat. That might sound confusing at first, but we're going to go into it and I'm going to give you a good example of how to calculate your baseline given some assumptions. So for our character, we're going to be level 4, we're going to have 16 strength, and we're going to be using a Greatsword that has unmodified damage. What that means is I'm not smiting, I'm not using some sort of Battlemaster maneuver or having any sort of additional effect from my Greatsword. It's just going to be the 2d6 plus strength damage. So if we check our damage calculator, I'll provide a link for that in the description below. If you're doing 2d6 damage, your average damage from the dice is going to be 7 damage. We're going to put average damage for dice at 7 into this box. Now for our flat damage, because we have 16 strength, our strength modifier is +3, so whenever we make a weapon attack, we always get to add the +3 from strength mod. Our attack bonus is our strength mod plus proficiency bonus, which at level 4 is going to be 3 + 2 for a total of 5. And the only thing left now is to put the target's armor class in. We're going to start at 10 and then we're going to start increasing it to see what that breakpoint is. And when I say breakpoint, I mean that the difference from having the all-in attack, which is a -5 to your attack roll but +10 to damage, ends up being 0%. So there's no difference in your average DPR for power attacking. That's going to be the breakpoint. After you pass that breakpoint, you're going to be dealing less damage by using the all-in feature, and you should not be using the all-in attack once you're past the breakpoint. So for 10 AC, we are dealing 35% more damage if we do the all-in attack. That's pretty big. And of course, the lower the enemy's AC, the bigger that difference in damage is going to be. So we're going to increase it to 11. It goes down from 35% to 31% damage difference. We go to 12, 13, 14, 15. You can see now we're only down to an 8.55% increase in damage if we're using the all-in feature. And then if we go up to 16, that's our breakpoint. That's where it hits even. If an enemy has 11 more armor class than our attack bonus, it's probably not worth using the all-in feature as it is not giving us any increase in damage. Again, given these design constraints of using a Greatsword with 16 strength and having no other damage bonuses. So if we go to 17 here, you will see we are dealing 10% less damage because the -5 to hit is affecting our average DPR that significantly. The enemy AC is too high. These are for normal attacks, unmodified. If you have advantage, and I'm going to explain later on in this video how you can generate advantage to make your attacks hit as reliable as possible, you see we still have a damage increase with advantage. So given these design constraints, if we increase the target AC, it would have to have, the enemy would have to have 20 armor class for us to be dealing less damage with our Great Weapon Master feat, our all-in attack, attacking at advantage. That's pretty significant. So if you have advantage, you can be using your Great Weapon Master feat almost always up until an enemy AC of, roughly 20. Now again, this is assuming we're using a Greatsword and we're not increasing our damage at all. If we increase this average damage dice, the difference from doing the all-in attack is actually going to go down significantly. And that's because our average damage per hit is going to become much higher, so the plus 10 isn't going to make as much of a difference. Now, we can exemplify this by using the Everburn blade, which is 2d6 plus 1d4 damage. That would increase our average damage to 9.5. If we input 9.5 here, you can see our damage values have decreased significantly. Going back to targeting an enemy AC of 10, our damage increase is only going to be 22%, whereas before with 7 average damage, it was 35%. And our breakpoint here is going to be 15 instead of 16. So if the enemy has a total of 10 more armor class than our attack bonus, and we're using the Everburn blade with 16 strength, then our breakpoint here is going to be at, again, the target AC of 15, where we're getting a minus 1.7% increase of damage from the all-in feature. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing for me to explain. Hopefully that makes sense. Obviously, if you're a paladin and you're smiting, your average damage from the dice is going to be significantly higher, and you're going to get a lot less value out of the Great Weapon Master feat. If you're a fighter and you're making multiple attacks per round, the difference in damage is still going to be the same, as you can see here, but your overall DPR is going to increase depending on how many attacks you can make. So let's decrease the enemy's AC to 10 for the purposes of this damage calculation. The more attacks that we have, the more average DPR we're going to do. Although the difference is still going to be the same percentage, right? So it's always going to be, if the enemy has 10 AC and we have an attack bonus of 5, given these damage variables, our difference in damage is always going to be 22%, regardless of the number of attacks we can make. It's just our total average DPR is going to increase. So because of that, again, I think it's better to use the Great Weapon Master feat and the Sharpshooter feature on classes such as the Ranger and the Fighter and the Barbarian, who can make a lot of attacks in one turn without having any other bonuses to damage, whereas the Paladin and the Rogue, who have the sneak attack and smites, they're not going to get as much value out of these features, right? We can exemplify this by going into the dice calculator, 2d6 plus 2d8 from a first level smite. That's going to be an average damage of 16. Throwing that in here, we can see our breakpoint is already 12 AC. So if we are smiting at first level, it's already not worth it to use a Great Weapon Master feat against a target AC of 12. Now, does that mean it's worth taking the feat on those characters or not? It still can be worth it, especially for the Paladin, just to get an extra attack, a bonus action attack if you land a crit or kill an enemy. That means that you can land one more attack to smite with, so you actually are increasing your average DPR by a substantial amount. But in terms of the all-in feature, which is kind of the main thing we're looking at, the Paladin's not going to get as much value as something like a Fighter would, who can make more attacks, and each attack is going to have less average damage from the dice rather than the flat damage. So another thing I want to mention before we go into tips on how to increase your attack bonus and generate advantage, your attack bonus actually defines how useful advantage is for the purposes of your all-in attack. The higher your attack bonus is, the less of a difference advantage is going to make for your difference in damage. We can show that very quickly by increasing our attack bonus to 6. You can see here it's a 15% difference between normal and advantage. Increase it to 7. Now it's only a 12% difference. Increase it to 8. Now it's only an 8% difference. Increase it to 9. It's getting smaller. Increase it to 10. And that's just about the same if we're attacking normally versus if we're attacking with advantage, if we had a plus 10 bonus to attack against a target AC of 15. So keep that in mind. The higher your attack bonus is, the less advantage matters. So you do want to really focus on increasing your attack bonus as high as possible. But of course, if your attack bonus is low, then focus on generating advantage for your attacks to increase your DPR as much as possible. So here are going to be all the ways in the early access that you can get a bonus to your attack rolls. The first and most obvious one is going to be Bless. This gives you a plus 1d4 to your attack rolls as long as the person who casted Bless is maintaining concentration on that spell. They can upcast it to increase the amount of people being affected, and of course the effect of Bless lasts for a minute, which is 10 rounds in total if they can maintain the concentration. Next up, we have enchanted weapons. These can confer a +1 all the way up to a +3 bonus to attack as well as the damage of your weapon, and they can vary from weapon to weapon. You can find things like a +1 Greatsword or a +1 Great Axe or a +1 Halberd, all of which will give you a bonus to attack of +1. If it's a +2 weapon, it'll give you a +2 bonus. If it's a +3 weapon, it'll give you a +3 bonus. Makes sense, right? Next up, we have High Ground, which this is more of a situational thing, but if you're using pole arms, it's actually possible to pull off and will be highly beneficial to you. If you attack from High Ground, even with a melee weapon, it does give you a +2 bonus to your attack roll. Next up, we have Bardic Inspiration. If you have a bard in your party, they can give you Bardic Inspiration. That's going to give you +1d6 or more, depending on their Bardic dice, bonus for a singular attack roll. So this is only going to apply to just one attack, but that bonus of 1d6 or maybe even 1d8 or 1d10 is going to be very huge for your character. Now, the last two bonuses for your attack rolls that you can get are going to be Loviathar's Love status effect, as well as the Bliss Spores status effects. The Loviathar's Love status effect gives you, when you're below 30% HP, an additional bonus of +2 to your attack rolls and saving throws. The Bliss Spores is going to give you a 1d6 bonus to your attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. Both of these are really strong effects. If you want to know how to get them, you can look it up yourself via the wiki for Baldur's Gate. I don't want to spoil any of that information, but just keep in mind there are some status effects and buffs you can get from doing quests and other sorts of things that will increase your bonus to attack. Now, next up are some ways you can generate advantage on attack rolls. And as I said earlier, the higher your attack bonus is, the less advantage is going to matter, but especially early on, advantage makes the difference between winning a fight and losing a fight a lot of the times, and is going to massively increase your damage when using the Great Weapon Master feat. So the first one is going to be Fairy Fire, which is a very common first level spell that a lot of classes have access to. This is going to mark enemies if they fail a dex save, causing them to glow brightly. They're not going to be able to turn invisible, and all attacks against them have advantage. Make sure you don't hit your allies with this, but if you can hit the enemies, all your melee attacks are going to come in with advantage so long as you can maintain concentration on that spell. Next up is going to be the prone condition as well as the restrain condition. If you cast the entangle spell on enemies, that'll restrain them. If you knock them with the topple effect from a quarterstaff, that's going to inflict the prone condition. Or if you use the trip attack from Battlemaster, that's going to inflict the prone condition. We also have the Barbarian's Reckless Attack, which is going to make you always land your attacks with advantage, but attacks against you also come in with advantage. And then if you're a Paladin, either the Oath of Vengeance, you have the Vow of Enmity, or if you are the Oath Breaker, you have the Spiteful Suffering. These are both going to be features you can use that will generate advantage for you against a singular target. Last but not least, we can also attack from stealth to land our attack with advantage on the attack. So that's going to be pretty much it for the video. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long when it came to the damage calculator. And if you have any questions at all, you can leave a comment. I'll try to help you out as much as I can. But the DPR calculator is a very reliable resource for calculating the breakpoints of when and when not to use the all-in. I gave a kind of a baseline rule of thumb that if you have just a normal greatsword with 16 strength, if an enemy has more than 11 armor class, then your attack row, which your attack row bonus being +5, then it's already not worth it to do your all-in attack unless you have advantage. So again, you can crunch the numbers on this. You'll get a feel for it eventually as you're using this Great Weapon Master feat in game and the all-in attacks. But a lot of the time, if you want to finish off an enemy, you're going to not use the all-in feature. But if you're trying to DPS and deal consistent damage turn after turn, you're going to want to have this thing on. And you're going to want to find ways to get advantage or find ways to get big bonuses to attack to really increase the damage output of your character. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the channel. I'm going to be pumping out tons of Baldur's Gate videos, especially when the game fully comes out. Right now, I'm just kind of making videos to keep myself contained as I'm slowly building more and more hype for the release date. I could not be more excited for this game coming out. But anyhow, that's pretty much going to be it for the video. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day and weekend.